Well, welcome back to Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. This is episode 70, and we have a powerful story today. Gary Powers, not really a play on his last name, but it is a powerful story. Gary has a fascinating tale. If we have U2 fans, not the music, but the aircraft. I know, dad joke, and I'm not a dad, so look at that. Still funny, though. But I actually got to see one of the U2s when I was up in Oshkosh this last go around last summer. And that's where Alex Gershton, who was on the show, connected me with Gary so we could have a conversation about the U2 incident that happened with his father and how he is trying to keep the Cold War legacy alive, both through his actions of speaking, writing books, the museums that he's a part of. So we'll get right into the conversation with Gary, and then we'll follow up at the end with show notes. Gary, welcome to Destination Aviation.
Well, Jeff, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this conversation. A mutual friend of ours, Alex Gershton, who was on the show, mentioned that you have an amazing background story. Your family has an amazing background story, and you're doing a lot of really cool, neat things down, not only for our industry, but to bring history back in the forefront of everybody's mind. So I would love up front, maybe if you could just kind of explain who you are, what you're doing, and how we got to kind of talk to each other here on this podcast.
Well, sure. I'll give a brief background and then we'll jump into the history.
Sounds fantastic.
I have founded GaryPowers.com about 12 years ago. I am lecturing, writing, and teaching Cold War history. I do over 100 programs per year. I run Washington, D.C. spy tours, as well as international Cold War and espionage tours. I'm the founder of the Cold War Museum, 45 miles west of Washington, D.C., founded that in 1996 to honor veterans, preserve history, and educate kids on this time period. I'm also an honorary board member of the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., and a past board member for the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum near Omaha, Nebraska. So that is my background in history, aviation, Cold War stuff. Prior to that,
Go ahead.
I was in nonprofit management for 25 plus years, running chambers of commerce, associations, founding the Cold War Museum, working for other museums. So that was the livelihood. But I switched over to GaryPowers.com 12 years ago, and so far, so good.
No, I love that. I've been to Washington, D.C. a few times, and actually you and I were talking, and I wasn't able to make it out to your museum, and Alex has said many great things about it, and I'm looking forward to visiting it soon because I love a good museum, especially in Washington, D.C. or the area around Washington, D.C. It's a great spot to do that. I have it myself, but my family has gone to the Spy Museum right there by where the National Transportation Safety Board is. Is that you have a hand in that as well? Is that what you just said?
I'm on the honorary board. I do have some artifacts on loan to them. And this stems from the fact that my dad was Francis Gary Powers, the U-2 pilot shot down over Russia May 1st of 1960. So there's the family heritage aspect of it. And then in my own right, I'm a Cold War historian. My master's degrees are in public administration, nonprofit management, as well as U.S. history.
No, when Alex was first talking to me about your background, Gary, and where you and your family and all that was involved, it was one of those for me. It's, I've always been somewhat of a history buff. And I was like, oh, yeah, Alex, I'll paint the scene. We were at the TBM display up at Oshkosh. And he said, have you ever talked to Gary? Gary's got a great story. He's got a big background. He's so interesting. And then I was like, oh, yes, that's right, with the U2. And so I don't know if you would mind maybe just explaining to the listeners up front the story that maybe don't remember, because we're talking 1960s, right?
We are, but prior to getting into this, let me mention about Oshkosh. I've been there the last 10 years. It's a great venue. EAA, Experimental Aviation Association, have their annual fly-in. I'm sure most of your watchers or viewers know about that, the big air show.
Yes.
I give lectures every day while I'm up there, usually Monday through Saturday, on the U-2 incident, on Cold War Virginia, on the end of World War II and the origins of the Cold War, or a partner with Chris Sturdivant and give a talk on other topics related to the Cold War history.
Really? And that's open to
place.
Any attendee that comes to Oshkosh. They can really, so I'm going to be up there this summer, so maybe I'll have to come catch your lecture. I would love to hear that.
Please do. I enjoy the ones inside the museum because that's air conditioned. And I don't mind the ones outside in the forums. but every 5 minutes there's an airplane going by.
Seems fair. Seems fair.
So, anyways, to get into the background, the history, my dad, and why I've really done this research. I'm born in California in 1965. I'm grown up in a family where my dad's a pilot. When I'm growing up, he's a Lockheed test pilot out of Burbank for Skunk Works, working directly under Kelly Johnson. He gets a job with a KGIO radio station in 1972. He transitions into doing news reporting, weather, traffic news, fixed wing Cessna 172 for the rush hour commutes. Then in 1976, he gets a job with NBC, KNBC Television, their news station, reporting on news, weather, and traffic, but this time for the evening news. So throughout my young life, I know that my dad's a pilot. My father dies on August 1st, 1977, in a helicopter crash while working for NBC Television. And that's when the light bulb goes on. That's when I realized that not everybody's dad gets shot down over the Soviet Union. Not everybody's dad is considered a spy. There's not a spy exchange that happens for your father. He's not everybody's dad is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. So all this came to light when I'm 12 years old. And as a
Wow.
result of him dying when I was that young, I was very introverted throughout high school. I came out of my shell in college. I started to do research to find out the truth of what my father went through. So I knew how to answer questions being asked of me. And as for people who don't know the story, my father was an F-84 pilot between 1950 and 56. He is recruited by the CIA in 56 to fly the U-2 spy plane. He's one of the first 30 pilots recruited. He is stationed in Turkey for his career in the U-2 program, but he does fly out of other air bases around Europe. Some of his missions are over China, Tibet, India, Pakistan, Middle Eastern countries, Eastern European countries, and of course the USSR, the Soviet Union. After 4 years of successful flights, my dad's one of the pilots with the most number of hours in the aircraft, most experience flying the plane. He's selected for the May 1st, 1960 mission. This mission will take off from Peshawar, Pakistan. It'll fly some 3,000 miles north. It will eventually land in Bodø, Norway, after a successful mission. But halfway through, my father gets shot down by a new and improved SA-2 missile. These missiles can now reach 70,000 feet and above. The first generation of these missiles, the SA-1s, could only go to 60,000 feet. So over 4 years of research and development, the Soviets improved their weapon system. On May 1st of 60, there's 8 missiles fired at his airplane. One of them explodes near enough to the tail section to cause structural failure. Down he goes. He's captured by the Soviets. He's turned over to the KGB. He is in prison for 3 months in solitary confinement, going through the interrogations. There's a 3-day trial at the Hall of Columns in which he's sentenced to 10 years in prison, and he ends up serving another 18 months in Soviet custody at Vladimir prison with a cellmate. And I can get into all these specifics later on in the conversation, but that's the general gist of things for your audience. Now, Dad was very controversial at the time, and in some circles still is. I believe it was easier to blame the pilot than to publicly admit we were behind the Soviets and missile technology. Easier to blame the pilot than to further embarrass President Eisenhower, who had just been caught lying about this incident. Eisenhower, cover story, it says it's a weather research flight, kind of like a weather research balloon.
Yeah.
You'd think the Chinese would change the cover story after 65 years. But anyways, so Eisenhower gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar. His reputation is tarnished. He's trying to save his presidential legacy. He's trying to make sure that he can, do damage control. So at the pilot's detriment. There were rumors and speculation at the time that were coming around saying that my father defected. He landed the plane intact. He spilled his guts and told the Soviets everything he knew, or that he had not followed orders and committed suicide, all of which were part truths, mistruths, some innuendos of the time. So we can start going into the Q&A, and I can fill in the gaps.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is one, I'll say, as just a aviation nerd, you hear about it, but not in obviously such depth as you would have known. I mean, there's so much there to unpackage. But as a young man in California, sorry, I actually didn't know that part about your dad passing away in a helicopter accident. I didn't know that part, but you were 12 years old. Do you think, my father's passed on as well. And he passed on when I was younger as well. And I often think in my own head, different stories that may have come about if he would have been around to have those conversations. Do you feel like you would have had probably those
Oh,
conversations with your father?
oh yes, most definitely. At 10 years old in 1975, I'm starting to read his book Operation Overflight that he
Yeah.
wrote to talk about his experiences. His co-author was Kurt Gentry. Kurt Gentry's next book after my dad's is Helter Skelter. So all about Manson, Tate
Yeah.
LaBianca murders in the
Yeah.
LA area back in 68, 69. There's definitely questions I would have asked
Yeah.
had he lived. But as a kid, 10, 11, 12 years old, I'm reading the book. Eh, that's interesting, Dad. That's really cool. I want to go play. I'm a kid.
So
So
he did kind of crack the door to have that conversation with you, though, himself. And obviously, I mean, I can't even think where my head would be when I was 12 years old. But so he did, you did at least kind of, he wasn't keeping you completely away from it.
no, 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 no. I was aware my father had been shot down. I was aware he'd been imprisoned in the Soviet Union. I was aware there was a spy exchange. There was a movie made back in 1976 called The Francis Gary Powers Story, an
Yeah.
NBC television movie starring Lee Majors. At the time
Lee-
in 76, Lee Majors was the $6 million man. So
yeah. Yeah.
I was more impressed with meeting Lee Majors than a movie being made about dad.
You got to meet him.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I met Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett, his wife at the time, and
Wow.
had the pinup poster on my bedroom wall and all that stuff. But
Well, who did it though? I mean,
yeah, Charlie's
that
Angels.
was quite the poster.
That was. With Dad and what he went through, I was aware of it. But again, I didn't understand the significance of it until he passed away. And
Yeah.
then at that time, it was too late to ask any questions. He's gone. Had he not died in August of 77, it may have gone on to be Powers and Sun Aviation. He could have run for politics. I mean, who knows where he would have gone with his career had he not passed away in that helicopter accident. But as a
Yeah.
result,
Sorry, go ahead.
as a result of his untimely death, mom has her hands full. The income basically is stopped. She's very frugal with Social Security benefits and eventually retirement benefits. She is able to get me through school. In high school, I'm testing her limits by sneaking out at night, drag racing on Mulholland Drive in friends' cars, sneaking into school and acquiring finals, and just doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. But fortunately, knock on wood, I didn't get caught. I turned myself around in college. I came out of my shell. Cal State Northridge, became the president of the fraternity at AEs there at Cal State Northridge. After 4 years of college, I failed out because I was having too much fun. I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. My dad had died. Mom has her hands full. She's an alcoholic. So I'm just running the streets, having fun, doing whatever I want. But running with some people who have good income or their parents have good income, and I don't have that. So I'm
Right.
driving a beat up Chevy Citation, and some of my friends are driving Porsches and Mercedes. So everything I've done in my career, I'm self made. Um, and I'm very proud to have say that. I
Yeah.
wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth.
I too come from a similar background. I often say I have a spork in my mouth, but that's two
Yeah,
utensils in one. So it's interesting. I had Chevy Citation as well. It did get me from point A to point B most of the time,
exactly.
but so it has to be interesting to you with what's going on right now. And the country, like you mentioned, it took off from Pakistan, right, to go to the USSR. So today with Iran
Oh,
and a
yeah,
lot of what you just referenced, it's interesting to me how prevalent it is probably to today and rescue missions and negotiate in this Middle East part of the world that seems to always be a center of attention no matter what geopolitical centric is going on at the time.
yes, it's very unique how history repeats itself.
It is.
You'd think that the leaders around the world would learn from past mistakes, but I don't think they do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I don't think so either.
so
So
I don't really want to dive into current affairs, I have my own political opinions, and just like everybody else does,
It's
I like to
fair.
focus on the history of what the Cold War was. And in order to understand the world today and what's happening right now in the Middle East, you have to understand the Cold War.
Yeah.
And in order to understand the Cold War, you've got to understand World War II. And in order to understand World War II, you've got to understand World War I. Cold War history is fluid, it is not rigid. And
Yeah.
everything that's happening today is a direct result of what took place during the Cold War, as well as the end of it. And three primary examples. One is the war in Ukraine. East versus West in a third country, Russia versus the West. They're providing backing for one side, the West is providing backing for another side, just like Vietnam, just like Korea, just like the hot wars of the Cold War. Then you've got Gaza in the Middle East, Israel and Hamas. Now that goes back to biblical times, of course. But in 1947, Israel becomes a state. Palestine does not. That is a Cold War event. And there have been tensions and headbutting ever since. And then today, the most recent war in Iran, because of the Peacock Throne back in the 70s, when the Shah of Iran was ousted by the religious right, and there have been confrontations and headbutting ever since. So it all has a direct correlation to Cold War history.
Wow. Wow. And so even, more important to restore such historical facts. Did you find as you went through the process, because obviously you were, collecting these pieces. So if I'm understanding from your time and the citation with the friends with the Porsches, you're still in California at this point, right?
Back then, yes. I was in California from when I was born in June of 65 until July of 92.
92. Okay.
I had graduated, I had failed out of Northridge. I worked 2 years for real estate developers in Southern California, thinking I was going to be a real estate developer. I was in at the bottom rung. I was going to, ride the corporate ladder, but then I could not get a promotion because I didn't have a degree. And so I went back and graduated in about a year and a half from Cal State University, Los Angeles, with a degree in philosophy.
Okay.
Easiest thing I could get. Logic to me just makes sense. It's a game. It's a puzzle. I don't have to study. I get A's. And Hegel, Socrates, and Plato, that was a little more challenging. But I got my degree. Then I was an unemployed philosopher. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with my life? About that time in 91, my grandmother, my dad's mother, dies, passes away in Pound, Virginia. I come out for the funeral in July of 91. I get to the hollers in Southwest Virginia in the coal fields, and I realize I don't know my family. So within 6 months, I had made up my mind to move to Virginia. I had saved some money. I sold a car. I sold my stereo system. I sold whatever I could. Came out to Virginia with about $3,000 cash in 1992. Lived for a month with an aunt in Falls Church, Virginia. Got enrolled at George Mason University because I knew I needed to have a master's degree because a philosophy degree was just not going to cut it. And ended up getting a master's in public administration, nonprofit management, thinking I'd always have a job in Northern Virginia, which is the capital of nonprofit associations. So while I was there, I worked for the Downtown Fairfax Coalition in the city of Fairfax, historical revitalization. I worked for a home inspection company doing their marketing. That led to a job with the Vienna Chamber of Commerce, which is a kind of like Sherman Oaks or is to LA, a suburb. Okay. And then helped to create the Tyson's Corner Chamber of Commerce. And the Tyson's Corner Chamber was basically their financial district. It's where AOL was founded back in the 90s. Wow. So, now it's a bunch of high rises going in and very high priced real estate, but a suburb of Washington, D.C.
So you did your job right.
Oh, yeah, so far. Well, some people like to say I screwed it up, but, hey.
Well, I had somebody say to me once at a council meeting, I think it was, or it was to one of our elected officials. They said something to the line of, we don't mind progress. We just don't want anything to change.
Very good.
That's fair enough.
So I met my wife up in the city of Fairfax. We were married in 2000. We had our son, only one son, in July of 2002. And then in 2005, I moved down to Richmond, Virginia area to get out of the rat race of D.C. I'm working in my home office, helping to create the Cold War Museum to get it established. Once the doors open at Vint Hill, which is 45 miles west of D.C., I take a back seat and I start GaryPowers.com shortly thereafter. So the books I've written over the last, 12, 13 years now, my first one, if you can see this okay.
I can, yep.
Okay, good.
Letters from a Soviet prison.
So this is my dad's prison cell in
That's the actual
Vladimir,
prison?
and I was able to visit there in 1997. So
Wow.
I was able to go into his prison cell doing my research. I
Wow.
found 85 of his letters to and from prison. I found the journal that he kept while incarcerated. So I thought it was very important for the historical record to have
Yeah.
his thoughts, his feelings, his hopes, his despairs, what it's like to be in a Soviet prison during the middle of the Cold War. So Dad wrote everything, but I
Yeah.
assembled it. I did not edit it. I did not
Wow.
change spelling or grammar. It's his words, his thoughts, his feelings. So that's the first book that came out in 2017.
Available,
My
I'm assuming, Amazon, places where people normally buy.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, worldwide distribution. That is self-published, but
Okay.
it is available everywhere. My second book through a publisher, Spy Pilot, Francis Gary Powers, the U-2 Incident, and a Controversial Cold War Legacy. So this I write with a co-author, and it's published through a publisher. Now it's distributed by Simon & Schuster. And so this is the truth of what my father went through. 35 years of research, 5 years to write it, the truth of what happens to him. I dispel the conspiracy theories, the rumors, the misinformation, the fake news of the time. I set the record straight. As a result of my research, my father was posthumously awarded the POW medal in 2000 and the Silver Star in 2012. So that's this story. And I also
Wow.
talk about my antics in California after Dad's death
That's
and
street
doing stuff I
racing?
shouldn't be doing. But this way, no one can sue me.
That
Not
seems
sue me,
fair.
I'm sorry. No one can blackmail me.
There you go.
It's like, oh, yeah, I did that. Read my book. my,
Seems
my
fair.
third book is for a younger audience, Enemy Territory. It is a graphic novel, so basically a glorified cartoon.
I was going to say, it
Comic
kind of
book.
gave me comic book remnants there of.
Exactly. So I found that, doing some substitute teaching in the Chesterfield County area, kids love comic books still. I still like them. And so
I
I
do
thought
too.
what a great way to teach Cold War history is through these graphic novels.
Oh, I
So
love
this one's
that.
on the U-2 incident, and it's
Yeah.
based right on my dad's book, Operation Overflight. It's verbatim, basically, but it's in graphic novel format. That led me to my next book, The Berlin Airlift, Remembering the Humanity. So another graphic novel talking about the Berlin candy bomber, talking about the Berlin crisis, talking about a little bit of the U-2 incident when this happens in 60. The Berlin airlift, of course, happens in 1948-49, but the other things in Berlin as a result of the Berlin Wall and everything else, we tie into this. So another graphic novel for a younger audience. And then the last two books came out, this one to 2024, Cold War Virginia. We got a picture of Dad when
I
he
love
was
that.
testifying in front of the U.S. Senate after he came home. Nike missiles in Lorton, Virginia, the Pentagon. We also talk about the CIA. We talk about Camp Perry. We talked about various military bases in the Commonwealth. We talk about Dad, native Virginian. General George Marshall, the Marshall Plan, lived in Leesburg, and even Werner von Braun, the German rocket scientist. He worked at Huntsville, Alabama for a while, Redstone Arsenal. Then he worked for NASA. And when he was working for NASA in D.C., he lived in Alexandria, Virginia, and that's where he ended up being buried. So there's a chapter on him. And my latest book is about to come out in May. So this is a free issue, is Cold War California. So again, we talk about Reagan. We talk about Nixon. We talk about San Onofre, the nuclear power plant. We talk about the Berlin Wall and Reagan's famous speech, as well as the Nike missile system at SF-88 at the Golden Gate Bridge. This SF-88 Nike site is fully restored. Great museum to visit in San Francisco. So we talk about the people, the places, the things that shaped Cold War history during this time period. Bechtel. We talk about the different things in California from what's it called? Chatsworth, the Rocketdyne, where they would test the rocket engines. We talk about Howard Hughes and the Glomar Explorer that was built there in the Long Beach area and was docked near Catalina for a while before picking up a Soviet sub. So we talk about Cold War history in the specific state. And now me and my friend, Chris, we're working on Cold War Florida currently that should be out next year.
I was going to mention, I didn't know about the Nike site in San Francisco, but my father, he worked on the Nike launching systems when he was in the Army, and he was based in Key Largo, Florida.
Nice,
And
yes.
Yeah, they had transitioned from Nike to, I believe, Hercules missiles, and they went to ballistic. They were there for Cuba, obviously, was when he was there. And then during the time that he was there, an agreement was reached, and either they downgraded to ballistic missiles. So that was his run in with Nike. But I never, I lived
Very
in
cool.
the Bay Area for about 5 years, and I would have gone down there. I didn't know there was a site by the bridge. That's fantastic.
Yep, it is.
Um,
We've talked to them a little bit here and there. I'm hoping to visit it in June when I'm out in San Francisco. So
yeah, yeah. Oh, so you haven't been there yourself
I've
yet?
never seen that. I've seen Nike sites around the country. I've just never seen that one.
Wow. Yeah,
And just
it's interesting to me because I've done this. You'll be episode 70 of Destination Aviation, and some of those, like here in the Midwest region, I didn't realize all the sites, like even in our area, up in Duluth. I knew about Sawyer and some of their connections up in the Upper Peninsula, but just how much of that was dependent during those Cold War years. And so I love the idea that you're going around and capturing this history because you see some of these, I've been back up that way and you're like, what the heck is that? And it's like, oh, that's remnants from, the Cold War days. And there's I forget you would probably know, but there was it was like a command center by the Duluth airport that they used, and they would sit in there and they would monitor if there were rockets coming in from Russia. And I think they had, was it the F-4 Phantoms up there at the time?
sure, the
I think
National
to
Guard
go.
probably.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that's called. It
Okay.
sounds something like the Dew Line, but
It
the
could,
Dew
yeah, you
Line
know
was
what?
in Canada.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, it was. Anyways, it was interesting. And so when you start getting back into this, especially during that generation now that's passing on that really lived through that period of time, I love that, and I love the idea of and the books themselves. If people are watching and not just listening, if you go to the YouTube channel and see what you just displayed, one book coming out in May, but the other four available now. I love the idea of it being structured like a comic book because that does allow it to be reachable to a lot wider of an audience that maybe doesn't. And it's actually interesting because I think younger generations are getting into physical reading, which I never
Yes,
really left. I
very
love reading
important.
an actual book.
And just to let you know, personally, as well as your listen audience, my co-author Chris lives in Waukesha, Wisconsin,
He
and
does.
his
Okay.
first book was Cold War Wisconsin. His second book was Cold War Illinois.
It
So
was.
there are two books that you would really like to
I
get,
would.
and I can
Yeah.
put you in touch with him.
Yeah. I would love that. Yeah.
But they're
Absolutely. No,
also
that's
available
fantastic.
online as well. I
Yeah.
didn't partner with him until these last two books.
Okay. Yeah, I love a good read, especially on a topic like this. With that time, I'll be sensitive. I think we still got a little bit of time before you have to peel out here. When you so your dad passed away in 77. Is that when he passed away? And then you made your way to Virginia in 1992. So during that period from when your father passed to then, and I know you sold the car, you had $3,000, you were going to see family. When you left California and went to Virginia, did you know at that time you were on the truck to get his story out, or did that more develop when you started to get to know? Was it his side of the family in Virginia that you got to know more, or was it your mother's side?
Okay, so I'm going to answer these questions backwards.
All right.
So both mom and dad were born in Virginia.
Okay.
Mom was born in Warrenton, Virginia, which is 45 miles west of DC. Dad was born in Southwest Virginia, right next to Kentucky border. They meet at the CIA headquarters where she's working at the time when he comes back home from prison. And so romance ensues. His first wife and him divorce. It's a rocky marriage. It didn't last through the stress and anxiety of prison incarceration and the notoriety and the paparazzi. They divorce in 62 upon his return home. Meets mom. Romance ensues. They marry in 63. He gets his Lockheed test pilot job, moves out to California with her, and I'm born in 65. So that's mom and dad's story in all of 30 seconds. As far as the time period between my dad's death in 77 and when I moved to Virginia. In high school, I'm running the streets and sneaking out and doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. I do graduate, thank goodness. I get into college, but in college, prior to failing out, is when I start doing research. I'm in the library. Hey, they have periodicals, they have magazines, they have lots of books. So I started to look. Does what this says about Francis Gary Powers? So I find out that my dad was on the cover of Time magazine in 1960, May, because of the U2 incident. So here I am, 20 years old, 1985, finding out for the first time that dad's on the cover of Time magazine. So that
Wow.
ooh, now I'm curious. what
Right.
other books, what other periodicals, what other magazines. And I start to do this research. Once I graduate in 1991 from college, I had the 8-year plan, 4 years to fail out, working 2.5 years full time, going back for a year and a half to get the degree. I realized that in order to learn more about my father and the truth of what he went through, I need to get to Washington, D.C. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to move out to D.C. was to get to the National Archives, get in touch with retirees from CIA, NSA, NRO, FBI, whoever I could talk with. There's some really great alumni associations of these agencies that are in the DC area. And it was very fortuitous that I do this. So I was able to meet people, General Goodpasture, General Vern Walters, both which were under Eisenhower's administration. I was able to talk to. They were on the advisory board for the Cold War Museum before they passed away. So I was able to meet just really, really good resources here. I wrote a letter to the CIA when I got here. And I said, basically, hey, I'm Gary Powers Jr. I'm doing research. I'm really trying to find out about my father. Any help you can provide, I'd appreciate. So I get invited in to their headquarters in McLean, Virginia, Langley. And I'm able to photocopy declassified files from their HIC collection, Historical Intelligence Collection. And so it was newspaper clippings, and it was briefings or memos that had been declassified that talk about the shoot down or he's in prison or things like that. Nothing that is sensitive, nothing that is top secret. I don't have a clearance. I couldn't get to that stuff. But as a result of getting the declassified files and doing interviews with some of his pilot friends, some of the people he worked with at the agency, my mom, my family, his family in Pound, Virginia, my aunts, my uncles, things like that, I was able to get this knowledge base that I have put into these books.
Wow. It's interesting as, just a citizen and not having a connection to the CIA that you could write them a letter. It's the power of your name and your dad that they're like, oh yeah, sure, come in. Like you said, declassified, but still the CIA in my own mind, without much knowledge beyond what you see on TV, I would think they would say nothing to you as and as a person.
They are very helpful to students
Well, that's
that write
okay.
them through their public affairs office. And
Okay.
oftentimes they will give an answer, they'll send information. They have an internship program for high school seniors and or college attendees that they get in, they start the process, and if they like it, they stay, and if they don't, they've got something good on their resume. So they are very accommodating to people who are doing research for legitimate reasons.
I love
If you're a
that.
conspiracy theorist,
This
you
is
might
one
get blown off.
well, because they have, and I've heard it. I haven't. You've probably seen it, but when you go into the lobby, right, the
Mm,
wall, is it the white stars?
correct.
Because so many people that are in those missions, they can't talk about they get a star, right? And it's like it just goes to probably the critical part of someone who decides to work with the CIA that you may
Yeah.
be a hero to the country, but nobody will probably ever know what you did.
Right, and that I can expand on that. I've been
Yeah.
inside several times on business, either doing a briefing for them. I even was able to set up a mobile display on the U2 incident in 1997 that was there for about a year. And this mobile display was originally just artifacts, and then at the CIA they helped to create text cards and cue cards that brought the story to life. So it commemorated the 35th anniversary of the U2 shootdown and the 50th anniversary of the creation of the CIA. So I had this in there for about a year, would go in and give lectures or give talks and stuff like that. And what I saw on this wall, the Wall of Honor, it helps to commemorate and honor those members of the CIA that were killed in the line of duty. And there was approximately, I think, 93 back in 96 when I started going in. And now there's approximately 143. So more agents, more personnel have died over the last 30 years. Some of them have names by it. Their missions, their names are declassified, and you can learn about them. Other stars are blank because they were classified missions. They've not been declassified yet. It could be in sources and methods or what countries we were in that we don't want to reveal yet. But each star represents a person who lost his life. One of them is the name of Buster Edens. Buster Edens was a U-2 pilot with my dad. He was one of my dad's best friends in the program. They considered each other brothers.
Yeah.
Um, Buster dies in April of 1965 in a U-2 crash at, I think, either Edwards Air Force Base or Area 51. I've forgotten which base. One
Okay.
of the pogos got stuck in the wing. He was trying to shake it off. He ends
Wow.
up getting too low. Something happens. He has to eject. He's not high enough. He passes away. So his name is there on the Wall of Honor. And
Wow.
just knowing that we have a family connection to that wall is just very, very endearing.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful story, and I guess that leads to as well because I think up at Oshkosh they had this last year a U2 on display. I think because
Yes, they
that's
do, or they did. And
yeah,
somewhere I've got a photograph of it. I was there. I know a bunch of the U-2 pilots.
yeah.
I've given lectures at Beale Air Force Base in California, the home of the program. I actually had a high flight in a pressure suit in the back seat of a U-2 trainer
You
to
did.
70,000
Wow,
feet and above. That was May 1st of 2000, the very
wow.
same day that Dad was posthumously awarded the POW medal. So I have you'll like this. So I carry with me in my wallet a $2 bill. And the
You know, it's
$2
funny.
bill,
My story won't be as good as yours, but I just want with this. I have a $2 bill in my wallet too.
so this one, I get all of the U-2 pilots I meet to sign.
Wow,
So we've
I
got,
love that.
just tons and I don't know, 40 or 50 signatures on here now. And
Wow.
even one or two SR-71 pilots I've come in touch with over the years. But all of them will carry their challenge coin. So never challenge a U-2 pilot. He'll have his challenge coin on him. And there's something else where if U-2 pilots pull out their $2 bill and you don't have yours, you owe them a drink.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're buying the drinks. You know what? It's funny because I think it's a generational thing with the $2 bills. I don't know if your dad carried one, but mine did. My grandfather carried a $2 bill. Um, but I've never seen someone take it to the level that you have with it. Mine's just a blank one. I love the thought that it's a living history as well. Like that's fantastic. That's such a great idea. Huh. And
Well,
there's
thank you. Yeah.
and for our listeners that are in it, right? I mean, I'm looking as I'm talking to you to get my own edification on it. So the first flight was 1955, so 70 years of
July
the
4th.
U2
Yep.
currently in flight, right?
Oh yeah, the U-2s are still in operation right now. They're over all the war zones currently, I'm sure, or next to them.
Yeah.
They are on the chopping block about every 2 or 4 years now.
Okay.
But they're such a good platform, and they bring back such good information for a within a budgetary constraint that they're going to keep flying for at least another 5 years, I believe.
Wow, what a legacy. Did you through this process, I mean, did it make you obviously, I mean, it has to be interesting because like with my father and the only thing I can really compare it to is in my mind with my own father, him passing is, I have my memories of my father and that's pretty much it. I mean, he's in the army, he did his thing but with you, kind of what you had talked to before, there were different stories about your father, different opinions about your father, even to the president of the United States. I have to imagine that is, as a young man, just trying to go through all that and figure it out. And it's probably somewhat understanding your father. I would assume in some way it has to be kind of awe-inspiring of at least, what it's such a powerful story, but that you get to kind of discuss like the notes your father wrote in a Russian
Oh, yeah.
prison. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine reading handwritten notes that my father wrote about anything, let alone such an event that's a world event. I mean, it had to have changed from the young man who is street drag racing in California to where you are now. I would assume, just that it has to have an adjustment. And even Kelly, you talked about like, because it is public. I mean, you look today and, public, I know doing this podcast is as minimal as it is. Everybody gets to say whatever they want to you and they get to decide their own opinion. But did you find it easy, hard? Just, did you enjoy the process? Were there times where you're like, this is too
Um,
much? Did it make you feel
no,
closer to your dad or?
no, it brought me closer to my father for sure because he wasn't
Yeah.
there to answer questions.
Yeah.
For example, I found his letters first, and I read the letters, and I
Yeah.
transcribed them all while I was in graduate school, knowing that one day I wanted to have them published. Um, then I found when my mother passed away in 2004, I found 28 reel-to-reel tape recordings that Dad produced. That's not right. That Dad recorded with his co-author when he was writing his book. So I was able to transcribe them into CD so I could listen to them. And that's when I found out a lot of really more good stuff. Him talking, like not talking to me, but
Right.
talking about these experiences, what he went through. And he does reference me. And even there's a part in one of the CDs where I'm a little 4-year-old babbling in the background, and my mother's chasing me around, going, "Gary, they're busy. You have to get out of the room." So, I mean, it brought back a lot of really cool
Yeah.
memories. Was just going to go with that. Eventually, I would love to do an audiobook that incorporates my dad's voice talking about these experiences. The profound thing, or the thing that I just find, just bizarre. It just,
Yeah.
I have a hard time getting my head around this. Is back in 2015, there's a movie produced called Bridge of Spies, and it is a Tom Hanks Spielberg production about the U-2 incident, the capture of Rudolph Abel, the exchange at the bridge. So here we have, of all people, Spielberg doing a movie on this historic event. I
Yeah.
mean, not in my wildest dreams would I have thought that that would have happened.
Right.
It was interesting enough that Lee Majors played Dad back in '76,
Right. That
but he was,
was.
just had no clue. And so, when I first found out about this movie from Hollywood Reporter and things like that, crap, they're going to do a movie about Dad. They have to do it right. There's so much conspiracy theories out there that I need to get in touch with them. So
Yeah.
I write a letter I write an email. I can't get in touch with Spielberg. I find people he worked with, Google search. I find their emails. I send out an unsolicited email. "Hey, I'm Gary Powers Jr. Would like to talk to Mr. Spielberg about this movie that will portray my father. Very important that we express the Powers family's concerns. If he bases the portrayal of Dad off the misinformation, they'll be painting him in a negative light. If they base it off the declassified information, they'll be painting him as a hero to our country." So as a result of that email, I get a response from the producer, Mark Platt. He and I talked for an hour sometime in June, July of 2014. At the end of the conversation, he basically says, "Mr. Powers, thank you so much for writing this email to us. You're very knowledgeable on the Cold War, the U-2 incident, what your father went through. How would you like to consult for the film?" So here I am, a consultant on a Steven Spielberg movie. Everything I've done, I did not set out to do. I
Right.
mean, just stepping stones, dumb luck.
Yeah.
So one of those things.
Wow.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
It is, but, again, and that you're advocating for your father in that space too, and so were you happy? And I apologize, I haven't seen the movie. Were you happy with the way the movie turned out?
Yeah, the movie's very well done. I mean, it's Tom Hanks and Spielberg. How can it not be well done?
Right.
Um, it's based off two books. It's based off Dad's book, Operation Overflight, and it's based off of James Donovan, his book, Strangers on a Bridge, all about the Soviet spy Rudolph Abel that was caught in New York City in the '50s. So between those two books and some of the misinformation of the time that made it into the movie, you've got the movie Bridge of Spies. But what's interesting is that even though it's not 100% historically accurate, it's not a documentary. The misinformation that's in the movie is what was being said at the time. So it's historically accurate in that respect, but it's not historically accurate as what actually happened in history now that we know declassified files and the truth has come out.
Wow.
So,
It's interesting because, I was watching a documentary the other day with, was it General Patton? And I didn't know this after World War II that supposedly he thought we made a mistake by
yeah.
basically allowing the Soviet Union to, yeah. And then there was the conspiracy theories about his automobile accident.
Yep. And then
you
the
know,
bolt in the neck.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
I get conspiracy stuff in my email all the time.
I was just gonna say you're probably a magnet for people that wanna to send you that. Um, so do you and obviously I wanna get into the like you said, the politics of today, but as far as just relations, because you were able to access the prison where your father was held, I can't imagine a scenario right now where that would probably happen for an American.
Oh,
Um, so do you
um,
look back I mean, you must have made friends and stuff
I
in
do.
Russia through this process.
Yes, I do. And so I've been to Russia 4 times.
Okay.
My first time was in 1990,
Okay.
right
So that
after the fall of the Berlin Wall,
I was just
prior to
gonna
the
say,
fall of the Soviet Union. So very
yeah, that's
unique
pretty
time period to be there.
yeah.
I wanted to see the U-2 wreckage. I wanted to see the May Day parade. I wanted to see different stuff. And they said, oh, no, we're going to take you out to the dachas on May 1st. Oh, we don't know where the U-2 wreckage is. They knew, but
Right.
they didn't know how I would react. They didn't know what
Yeah.
I would say with news cameras all around. So I was very sheltered. I was very controlled on that first trip. But then the wall falls, the Soviet Union collapses, and going back in 1997 on a spy tour of Moscow, organized by retired CIA, KGB, Northwest Mounted Police, FBI, and other agencies. And we go to the Central Armed Forces Museum, and there's the U-2 wreckage. It was there in 1990 when no one knew about it, and it was still there in 97. But now, since we're paying our way, and they caught on to capitalism right away, hyper capitalism, as I want to call it. If you paid for your tour, they would take you where you wanted to go. We drove by the KGB headquarters. We could not get in, of course. We went by a drop point used by a female CIA agent. I want to say Peterson or Patterson, a lump of coal, and had secret documents in it. And she was compromised and caught. So that's a very famous
Yeah.
event back in the 80s or 80s, I think. And I was able to meet some KGB folks and other people. So I do have a KGB friend,
Yeah.
and she and I have helped each other over the years. On my next trip to Moscow in 2010, that is the 50th anniversary of the U-2 shootdown, I gave a lecture at the Central Armed Forces Museum in their auditorium adjacent to the U-2 display, had a translator and stuff. So that was really cool. The director of that museum and I are still in touch on occasion if we have questions or have to bounce something off each other. And then my last trip was 2017, December. I was doing research for my book Spy Pilot, and the spidey senses were tingling. um, but that's the trip I went to Sverdlovsk, which is where the U-2 was shot down. And I was able to see their museums that have pieces of the plane. I met people, villagers that were little girls or boys at the time who remember seeing this with their parents that talked to me about it. I was
Wow.
able to see the impact craters where the U-2 wreckage crashed or fell to
They're
Earth.
still there.
The impact craters, yes.
Wow.
Where my father landed by parachute is now, it was a farm then, it's now a housing development.
Okay.
So I was able to see these places, take pictures for the book, do research, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. But as a result of current affairs, I'm not going back anytime soon.
Yeah. It's one of those countries that I want just because of the history, right? I always wanted to visit, and then I kick myself because I'm like, I waited too long. I guess in my mind I was thinking we're all fine now. We're just gonna move forward. But did your father, was he captured right away, or did he spend some time in Soviet Union before he was
Oh,
captured?
no, no. He was captured right away,
Right.
basically. He
Okay.
shot down at 70,500 feet. He bails out at 30,000 feet. His parachute opens automatically at 15,000 feet. He parachutes down to the ground. Once on the ground, he's surrounded by locals that turn
Yeah.
him over to the local authorities, that turn him over to the KGB. So that first day, May 1st of 60, that evening, he ends up in Lubyanka prison, which is the KGB prison in downtown Moscow. He's there for 3 months of captivity, solitary confinement, going through the interrogations, bright spotlight, grueling questions, threats of death, but no physical torture, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Then basically the first week, Dad is lying to his captors outright, trying to mislead them any way he can. But then after the cover's blown and Eisenhower gets caught lying because Khrushchev says, oh, it's not a weather research flight, it's a CIA spy flight, Dad has to change course because now international headlines around the world. And so the KGB guard in charge with a copy of the New York Times on or about May 10th into the interrogation chamber, shoves the newspaper in Dad's face, yells at him, you've lied to us. You told us you were trained in Arizona. The New York Times says you were trained in Nevada at Area 51. You might as well tell us everything. We'll get it out of your American press anyways. So now Dad's stuck in a rock and a hard place. He doesn't want to tell the full truth. He doesn't want to give away secrets. Yet he doesn't want to get shot. So
Right.
he has to do this, song and dance with them. He
Yeah.
tells the full truth when he knows they'll verify it in the newspapers. He lies to them outright when he knows they can't find out the info, and he dances around questions when he tries to cooperate as much as he can, here to cooperate, but not give them any information. So that's how he
Wow.
got through that. 3-day show trial. He's sentenced to 10 years in prison on August 19th, 1960. He serves an additional 18 months in captivity in Vladimir with a cellmate. Then on February 10th of 62, he's exchanged at the Glennecker Bridge, Potsdam, Germany. A cold, dark morning eyes on each side of the bridge, positively ID'd, walk home to the respective freedoms. So that is the 1 hour talk I give in all of 2 minutes.
I know you said no torture. Was he physically in after 18 months? Was he lost a lot of weight? Was he generally who people remembered or?
Oh, yeah, so there was no physical abuse, but there
Okay.
was sleep deprivation. There was the
Sure.
bright spotlight. There was the 16-hour days. There
Yeah.
was the threats of death. But no physical abuse. I was told by a retired KGB guy 30 years ago that the reason my father was not physically tortured is that he was too high profile an individual. The KGB, the Russia, the Soviet
Yeah.
Union at the time wanted to show the world how nice they are, how humble they are, what a great country they are. So they did not physically abuse my father.
Wow.
But mentally, there was that aspect of it.
Well, yeah.
And what did you just, when he came home, he had lost about 25, 30 pounds of weight. He had a very poor diet. He did put some weight back on when he came home. He was able to be a test pilot for Lockheed and continue to be a pilot afterwards. There was no long-term psychological detriment, no shell shock, or no, what do you call it? I just blanked on the word, PTSD.
Okay.
So there was mild night frights, nightmares, cold sweats for a while.
Wow.
And then he realized, oh, I'm back home. Oh, I can get a drink of water. I can go back to bed. So it took about probably a year for him to adjust. And
Yeah.
then that's when he was hired on by Lockheed.
Did and I know we're within the 5-minute window, I think, when you have to go. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask on the aviation side, and if you don't mind talking about it, but in the helicopter incident, was that to what
Oh,
happened? Was he flying the
yeah.
helicopter? Or
So he was the helicopter pilot
okay.
for NBC. He was trained to fly the Bell Jet Ranger out of Texas, Bell headquarters, wherever that is.
Yeah.
And he had flown for about a year and a half. He had complained about a month before that the fuel gauge was misreading, that he had landed, he checked his fuel, and he discovered on multiple occasions he had 20 more minutes of flying time than was registered on the fuel gauge. So we know that he talked to Mom about this. Mom shared that story. We then know that the helicopter was in for a mechanical overhaul the week before August 1st, which is when we think, there's no positive proof, but we think that the mechanics fixed the fuel gauge to be accurate because Dad had reported it was off. Dad did not see it in the logbook, or he wasn't told, so he's flying with the assumption on August 1st he has 20 more minutes of flying time. Well, now when the gauge is zero means zero. You don't have 20 more minutes.
Right.
He starts to auto-rotate, but once you pick that auto-rotation, you can't deviate. He sees kids playing baseball, doesn't want to land on top of the kids, down he
Wow.
goes. So
Wow.
that's what the family thinks happened.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sorry to hear that part of it. I mean, it's such a powerful story, and I appreciate you giving me so much of your time. I know we're within the window here. Is there anything I didn't ask up front that you would want the listeners to maybe know?
Sure. There's a couple quick things here. One is there is a mobile display on the U2 incident that
Okay.
I've taken around the country and internationally for about 20 plus years now.
You
It's
take it.
currently, I'm sorry?
You take it. You take the display.
Yeah, I take it around. I set it up. I break it down.
Wow.
It's been at the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum near Omaha, Nebraska, the last 8 years. I'm looking for another venue to host it.
Okay.
2027 will be the 65th anniversary of the spy exchange. So there's a nice tie into an anniversary date, can generate press for the host institution. In addition, if people want to contact me about the spy tours of DC, about the spy tours of Europe, or Cold War spy tours of Europe, they can reach me through my website, GaryPowers.com. Also, spytour.com. And if they want to learn more about the Cold War Museum, they can learn about us online at coldwar.org. So those are the three websites that can get in touch with me, give you more information about our efforts. We're always looking for financial donations for the Cold War Museum, which is a 501c3 charity. And our big fundraisers are in May coming up and December of every year. More information online, coldwar.org.
I was just going to ask, on your website, you typically have all of your speaking engagements on there as well, right?
Correct. And I've got to add a few more I just secured today.
Oh, fantastic. So 4 books out, plus your dad's book, 2 movies, one done by Spielberg, Lee Majors is in the other. You have a 5th book coming out in May. What date in May or mid-May?
It might be the 8th book. Hold on.
8th book? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's going to be the 7th book.
7th book.
The 6th book comes out in May, Cold War, California.
Cold War, California.
The 7th books will come out next year, Cold War, Florida.
And on your websites, everything you just mentioned, and I'll make sure to put the website links in the show notes as well.
Please, thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody can go through your websites to get to purchase the book, correct?
My website, if they want autographed copies,
Fantastic.
Barnes & Noble or Amazon, if they want used or discounted copies.
And then we did mention Oshkosh, but this year at Oshkosh, we can find you again speaking on the events.
Correct. I'll be usually giving a talk every day at the museum or at the forum. And when I'm not talking and giving a presentation, I hang out at Kid Venture and I talk about the graphic novels and I autograph little U-2 wooden planes and I get to teach kids about Cold War history.
I love that. I love that. Well, Gary, thank you so much for taking some time to describe not only your dad's background, but your background. I appreciate Alex Gersten putting me in touch with you because it's been looking and seeing what you do is fascinating. And quite honestly, I could talk to you for hours, but we'll save something for those people that come to your speaking engagements.
When we're at Oshkosh, buy me a bourbon. I'll keep talking.
Hey, I can do that. I may even buy it with a $2 bill.
Perfect. Very, very good. Well, thank you very much for having me on, Jeff. And Alex, thank you for the introduction. And I hope to see you both up at Oshkosh this year, as well as other friends that we've made through this podcast.
Thank you so much, Gary. I really appreciate it. Wow. What a phenomenal conversation with Gary. I can't even imagine some of the stuff that his father had to go through and just the journey that he was on to discover his dad's history. Just powerful and amazing. Thank you to Gary for sharing that with us and all of us and listeners to the show. And thank you to Alex Gersten for putting that together for both of us. I hope you go to the show notes and check out Gary's website. I'm looking forward to being back in the Washington, D.C. area so I can check out Gary's museum. I think it's going to be fantastic. I love a good museum and I love spy stuff. So anybody that has any interest in any of this, I mean, listen to the stories and go in and listen to him speak somewhere, meeting him, autograph book. What a great tale. So thank you so much to Gary to being on the show. If you liked the show and you have an idea yourself, like Alex, you know where to find me, dapodcast85@gmail.com. If you would like to be a guest, you'd like to pitch a guest idea, we have some great interviews coming up. I also want to put on a vlog about the Waco factory. The Waco people were very kind to let me go through and tour and video and see some of the Wacos getting built. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting our own Waco so we can start having Waco adventures on this channel. But I loved the interview. It was fantastic. Thank you again to Gary and Alex for helping me put it together. And so, like I said, got a few things coming up here, some more interviews, maybe do a narrative episode, start working on some of the stuff that we have with the Waco. And I will get the challenge coins on the website here sooner than later. I'll let everybody know. I just got to finagle through the GoDaddy platform to get that on there. If people would like to purchase a challenge coin, they've come out really good. I've been trying to give them out to people that have been on the show. So Alex, I do owe you one. Gary, I owe you one. When I see both you fine gentlemen in person. So thank you so much for coming along on the journey today. And until next time, my friends, I'll see you down the runway.